Good evening, and thank you for making time to join us this evening. Now, 1 in every 5 girls aged 10 to 19 is either pregnant or already a mother. Our focus today on Health Digest with me, Dr. Mercy Korir, is on teenage pregnancies. Now, these girls are mostly underage, some at a critical juncture of their lives. They get pregnant every year in what is a silent epidemic that is sweeping across the Republic. 1 in 4 adolescent girls in Nyanza, Rift Valley, and coast regions have begun childbearing, according to data by the Population Reference Bureau. Now, what causes these teenage pregnancies and early motherhood? And most importantly, what is being done about this? To find out the answer to these questions, I set out on a journey to South Nyanza, and specifically I was in Sega in Siaya County and Mageta Island, all in Nyanza, just to talk to some of the youths, some of the adolescents who have gotten pregnant early. And one of the girls that I talked to was Lucy Otieno, who had this to say about her experience in being a mother during her teenage years. 22-year-old Lucy Atieno lulls her child as she prepares to sit down for an interview with me. This is Lucy's second child. Her life story starts like thousands of others in this part of the world. It starts with her getting pregnant 5 years ago in school, radically interrupting and changing the course of her life.
It was hard now that I was still a youth. I was not able to provide the needs that she was to have.
Thanks to her love for school and persistence, Lucy endured through her final year in high school, and still she managed to score a respectable C+.
Studying in that situation of pregnancy, you know, health-wise, or sometimes you become sick and you need to study. So it was hard for me.
Many teenage girls who get pregnant end up being chased away from their parents' home.
Most of my father was not that happy.
That is the story of Lucy. And to help us discuss this issue of teenage pregnancies, with me this evening is Dr. Ann Kihara to my immediate left. Dr. Kihara is a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi at the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She is a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist and an ex-president of COGS, which is Kenya Obstetric and Gynecologist Society, and she's the incoming president of the Africa Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She says she's a serious friend of the youths and adolescents and their advocate and mentor. Also with me is Josephine Achieng, who's a youth advocate. Josephine She is a youth advocate with Advocates for Youth and Adolescent Health, affiliated with the Center for the Study of Adolescents. Last but not least is Dr. Susan Gitau, who is a counseling psychologist. She is a lecturer at the African Nazarene, and she teaches counseling psychology and specifically trauma counseling. She runs a community resource group on counseling psychology. And we'll start this discussion with Dr. Kihara. We've heard the story of Lucy and how now she is a mother of 2. She was a mother at 17. What is it about our society that seems to be encouraging early motherhood and these teenage pregnancies?
Thank you, Mercy. I think there are a lot of issues we need to really look and reflect on. And the first one I'll begin with is actually addressing sexual education. As young teenagers, adolescents, and youth, the first thing is to realize you're moving or transiting from childhood into an adult. And of course, that comes with its own challenges. You have the physical development, the psychological development, and more importantly, the cognitive development as far as sexuality is concerned. People beginning to realize, oh, that's a boy, that's a girl. But the issues of sexual health come in. Unfortunately, we haven't done a very good job in terms of providing comprehensive sexual education and providing tools or ammunition amongst these children or these growing adults to actually be able to tackle handling of life skills, to actually get themselves prepared psychologically, physically, and even financially to attend to a pregnancy. I think that's our biggest drawback. Secondly, I'd think of socio-cultural issues. A lot of cultures, once you go through puberty, you're deemed to be an adult. Unfortunately, puberty for the girl is usually heralded with the beginning of menstruation. And people then see that lady as a lady who can then get pregnant and now join into family life. So pubertal changes, early marriages, also contributing very extensively to early sexual debut and therefore pregnancies happening.
Okay, Josephine, as a youth advocate, Dr. Ari has talked about the comprehensive sexuality education and our socio-cultural setup. As a youth advocate, as a young person of this country, in your own view, what is it in our society that is encouraging early pregnancies?
I think mostly it concerns with, according to our culture, if you're given information on sexuality education, they deem it as the moment you give them the information, you're encouraging them to go do it. But what they don't understand is that already girls are already sexually active. So I think for parents and the kinds of Mercy, and they prefer to bury their head in the sand and be like, these are our young girls, they're not doing this, they don't know this information. But the truth is we know them, and most of the times the information we have is not the correct one. So the person that we need to get the information from, they don't even want to talk to us about it. So what do? I'll go ask my friend, and the information my friend will give me is not necessarily the correct one. So I think that's why we as young people are suffering. And policymakers, we have very nice policies in Kenya. Like on the Eastern and Southern African commitments, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education, they signed and agreed that it will provide comprehensive sexuality education, but it's not being provided. So I'm wondering, what's the use of having these very nice policies and then implementation is not being worked on?
Okay. Dr.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm just listening to her, and it's so amazing because we actually don't give the young people an ear. And they want to share. They want to be genuine. Actually, they want to tell you, I tried over the holiday. Maybe I'm just lucky I did not get pregnant. Apparently, I happen to work with groups from informal settlements. Like I have an initiative I have started in Thika, 14 mothers. It's amazing. You get one who go pregnant at 14 years. But why? Sometimes different reasons. Because the young girls in informal settlement, some of them, their mothers push them to have sex with even adult men because of money. So they could be pushed to having sex, but in the course of having sex, that is not protected. And they are not informed even of how to go about it, they get pregnant. It's a very sad situation. Others, it's because of influence of drugs and substance abuse. Yeah. So my friends have tried bangi, they may try, or alcohol. But in the course of it, they have impaired judgment. So if somebody says, let's just have sex, it feels nice, they go ahead and have it. We do also have adolescents, sad to say this, that they may have more sexually active hormones than others. True. So we are having a condition that I'm saying in Kenya we need to open our eyes to. Sexaholism is on the rise, or sex addiction, whereby you find this young person tells me many times, counselor, I don't want to do it, but I find myself doing it. So we are having them. Because if I talk about our age, I think it was even in the mind, you shouldn't have sex, I don't know, until you are taken to church, you're married, and it stayed with you. And it had the power to even make you repress any sexual feelings you have and attraction. What about them? They are watching everything in these forms that they are having. They know even more than you do about sex. The only issue is they do not know how to use this information. Okay. They have no one, a mentor or a senior person to share this information with. Apparently, all the teenage mothers I'm working with, there are 120 at the moment, 3 in settlement, informal settlements in Thika. They tell me they are mothers or they are fathers, and majority of them are also being brought up by single mothers. Never told them and never discussed about sex. So, unlike what we have watched about Lucy, she's saying, until you go through it, then you know what it is. I don't think we need to wait to see our young people go through these experiences. I'm very touched by the fact that she's talked about policies. By the way, our country has the best of the policies. Implementation is the problem, is the issue. And those of us who are willing to take this information from the shelves all the way to mashinani, you find we actually don't have political goodwill. Okay. So sometimes you cannot do it. As NGOs, I'm sure you have interacted with many NGOs, getting funding to do a project is almost next to impossible if you're not convincing. I sit in a board of one, we try. I love girls because I grew up where I saw girls really getting pregnant. It would scare me, I'm telling you. So I told myself when I grow up, when I'm in a position to do something, I will help rescue the girl child. And we do rescue every year 100 girls from informal settlements or even in the rural areas who are either sexually abused or they are threatened. Or they are being forced to early marriages. We rescue them, we put them, I don't want to mention where, but we take them every year. Then we have the parents on board. So we do parental guidance, such that, and we tell them the law is also will be after you. If this girl comes back home, because we don't want to put them there forever, it's 1 year and then we reintegrate them, you find that parents also don't know. So we may sit there, the likes of Kahara, you know, at times I'm so tough on the intellectual fraternity because we sit there. I'm happy I have one of a kind here.
And I actually quickly want to just, you've talked about, all of you have raised issues about not providing the comprehensive sexuality education, our socio-cultural setup, issues of financial capability and poverty, and the youth are sort of being ignored. I just want to find out from Dr. Kihara, from your own experience back when you're in med school at 21 and now, has society changed? Is it any different from your own story and what we are getting to hear now?
I think so. Well, I have a personal experience because I remember I was a single mom at 21, and at that time, you couldn't discuss anything pertaining to sexual health or ill health, because the two go together. But today we have access to more information. As she has mentioned, the technologies that we have actually give us better access platforms. Secondly, which I think we need to mention, is we have a lot of evidence coming out that clearly depicts we need to readdress this issue with a more critical eye, as opposed to putting in religion and the moral fabric, which had been what was principally guiding us at that point. Policies are there, but are we using the evidence being accrued and what is existent over a trend of time to actually inform what we should be doing? And last but not least, I think, is engaging the adolescent. You're talking about me as a youngster. Don't talk at me, talk with me. Because I know exactly what trials we're going through. Now, the issue of drugs, as has been mentioned by my colleague, drugs, alcohol abuse is on the rise. And then there's still this disempowerment of the female, the girl child, the girl child. I know people will argue and say, no, we've given them more opportunities, even the boys are getting more marginalized. But the thing is, who carries the pregnancy ultimately? It will be a lady. What happens to her life? Even like Lucy's life. She performed very well, but did she continue? So that constant disempowering, I think it's a double tragedy for women. It's very difficult to find women who are able to rise up. I was lucky. The support system I did get actually made me achieve to be the best that I can be. But that's 1 in a million. Lucy's story still has a good ending. She survived, the baby survived. She has a bouncing 2 babies now. But how many women go for the other converse and seek unsafe abortion? These are the issues. And I think Kenyans need to really rise up and think twice. When we're talking about providing comprehensive sexual education, what is its implication, particularly for the girl who gets hardest hit?
Josephine, is society rising up for the adolescent and the youth, as Dr. is saying we should? Are they? Is there any effort to rise up for the youth and give you, the young women, the young boys and girls, a voice in society?
Oh, that's a very complicated question. I think in as much as we want to say you're not, at least the society is doing something, even if it's a little bit, but it's something. Because right now, like, there are some schools, they provide comprehensive sexuality education through NGOs. They provide it. You're being given information that will help you to make better decisions for your life. Yeah, so I think they're doing a little bit, but I don't think it's enough. They can do more.
So what is this information in the, you say comprehensive sexuality education, and it may sound like a big thing. What is it in this whole package? Is it that the adolescents want to hear?
I think it's information on contraceptives, information on safe sex, HIV and AIDS, information on being taught of how to say no. For girls, the boys assume if you say no, you mean yes. So for me, I went through CSC, so I was told, this is how you say no and you mean it. For most girls, they don't know. Most of them, when they say no, they're either looking down or drawing maps. They really don't have the courage to look at you in the face and say, I don't want. So I think self-esteem is also there, the issue of good decision-making skills, your rights as a young girl in relation to your reproductive health. It's always covered there. It's not only about sex only, it's like a whole kind of information in there that will benefit us. So we don't necessarily have to see it like we're only big information about sex.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
very
now you're hearing it from the young people. And she's talked something that we are encouraging as counselors. It's called personal development. A lot of self-awareness. And I'm sure you and I can concur that our times, you had a lot going through within yourself, even getting attracted to the opposite sex, and you're like, maybe I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And because you've been told no sex, you repress it. Yeah. But for these people, they talk amongst themselves. So self-awareness is holistic. Yeah. And I'm liking what she's saying. And this is whereby we are saying we will not do it the same old way. If we want to address issues that are emergent and they are current. Because if it's religion, we have to accommodate that they are actually sexually active, even when they're in the church or in that mosque. So what do we do? And because we do not want them, in fact, they're even more scared of getting pregnant.
Yes, they're getting HIV and AIDS.
And one of the questions as I was preparing for this discussion was, we tend to talk about teenage pregnancies, early motherhood and everything. We ignore what actually leads to teenage pregnancies.
Exactly.
Is this the case?
We should be spending more time on harm reduction. So you're speaking about giving life skills. You're speaking about safe sexual practices. You're telling them, if you do engage in sex, beyond the pregnancy, what are the other risks that you stand to get? And if you do get pregnant, there are still risks even with that pregnancy. So harm reduction and reducing the pain of relationships, because I think we haven't really mentioned that. You are lucky with Lucy's story that she ended up marrying the gentleman. But how many of them imbibe in sex, end up pregnant, and with a dropped out or broken up relationship? So how do you get into healthy relationships? Yeah, which don't necessarily need to be sexual. They don't necessarily need to be sexual.
And how do you even know that what I'm engaging in might lead to unplanned sex?
Exactly.
So all this, because some girls get into sexual actions, not because they had planned, but they found themselves there.
Exactly.
How do we actually do that harm reduction?
And I would want us to delve into how to deal with that harm reduction and the challenges that these young girls actually go through just after the break. But before we go on break, I will leave you with the second part of Lucy's story. My panelists here have alluded a bit to some of a bit of what would be in Lucy's story. And so I want to leave you with the second part of Lucy's story. And when we come back, we'll be looking at untangling the issues around teenage pregnancies and early motherhood. So stay tuned. Getting pregnant at 16, Lucy's parents were angry that their daughter had failed them. Her school days were never the same, losing friends and becoming a village spectacle.
They didn't treat me that good because even friends that I had by then, they were not free with me. They saw me like somebody who is not their group. Yeah, they felt that I'm like a mother.
Many girls at this point simply drop out of school and get married, though Lucy ended up getting married to the man of her dreams and started out her family. It's not the same for many others.
Yani msichana akisha balehe, anaona ni kama wacha nijaribu kuona jinsi mwingine alikuwa. Sasa ni kubishana ni kama. Yani anaona mwingine alipachikwa mimba akiwa, yani alipata mimba akiwa angali shuleni. Sasa yeye pia akona tamaa, yani akiona mwenzake amebeba hivi mtoto, anaona ni kitu mzuri sana.
With new parental responsibilities, many girls' lives only rise to housewives.
When I finished my exams in 2013, is the same year I got married. My interest was being a nurse, but now that my level of education didn't reach where I wanted, I didn't go there.